On behalf of your host, Steve D, this is Bruce Buffer saying thank you for tuning in to Xtreme Lyfe. And now, this is the moment Xtreme Lyfe fans around the world have been waiting for. It's time!
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today I have Tommy Avallone on the show. Awesome guy, great conversation. He is a documentary writer, producer. He does a lot of really cool stuff, man. He did a documentary. He first caught my eye with a documentary called The Bill Murray Stories, which is, if you know anything about Bill Murray, he has this habit of showing up in weird places, telling people things like they'll never believe you, all kinds of things like that. And, he just kind of pops up. I had actually watched this documentary on an airplane flying somewhere and really just loved it. So, wanted to talk with Tommy about that. He didn't disappoint. He's a good guy, really cool outlook on things, and just seems to really, he's a creator. He's very concentrated on creating, just excellent content. He also did a documentary called Waldo on Weed, which is about a infant basically who was diagnosed with eye cancer. The family went to great lengths to try to help their son, even at the risk of their freedom. Really interesting character, interesting guy, a lot of cool stuff, and we talk about, a whole bunch of different things. So check out the podcast. I'm sure you're going to love it. I enjoyed doing it. It's definitely a great pleasure. Every time I get to talk to somebody who, anyone really, I love having everybody on the show. So it's just, he's a cool guy, enjoyed our conversation and really cool stuff. I think you're going to see a lot more stuff coming from him, a lot more interesting things and other projects. So check it out. Enjoy the show. Xtreme Lyfe podcast, Xtreme Lyfe Media. Check it out and enjoy the show.
I'm still so technology like that. I know how to edit, I know how to use a computer, but like some of these like certain things like this, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, this is kind of how we have to do things right now. And I've actually started doing this a while back like this when I have people on the West Coast or people I can't kind of get to.
Yeah.
Like yourself, I think you're out on the West Coast, right? You're in California?
Yes.
So it's a little easier than me trying to travel and all. Because I get out there a few times a year, but not as often as I like to. I try to podcast every week. So it's and I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
It's an honor for me. I think you've done some pretty intense documentaries, some pretty cool things. I mean, the first one I think I saw that you did was the Bill Murray one.
Okay.
Which I love Bill Murray. He's just one of my from the Saturday Night Live days on. I mean, just one of the coolest guys, and there's a lot of urban legends around him, and you focused on that. What got you? I mean, if I can ask, what got you interested in making that documentary particularly?
What if I said no? You can't ask that.
Then this would be a very boring interview.
I agreed to be on this, but you cannot ask me any questions.
This is probably going to be so. We'll just sit here for about 30 minutes and just stare. That'd be a really interesting interview.
Stare at I got lighting for. Let me see what I can do. But no. I had finished the Santa Claus documentary that I did, and I just started thinking like, well, what what would I want to do next? Because like I liked making a documentary. You know, our Santa Claus, I Am Santa Claus was my first documentary. And my buddy Brian, the Blue Meanie, he's a professional wrestler. Told me a long time ago about the story. It's like he's like, oh yeah, my buddy. It's a friend of a friend of a friend sort of thing. You know, was in a urinal and Bill Murray put his hands over his eyes, and when he turned around, he said, "No one will ever believe you." I was like, well, that's weird. Like I really want that to be true. But then it was during that time when like you started seeing like him going to a party and cleaning the dishes or singing karaoke with strangers. It was a very like, you know, it was that time when these things started popping up, or at least the internet kind of got wise to it, really, you know?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really funny, and it'd be really interesting if we approached that subject as if it was a Bigfoot movie, you know, like
Yeah.
Bill Murray's not Bigfoot, he's obviously real, but these stories can be treated like a Bigfoot type documentary. And I always thought that little, you know, they say the take, you know, would be really, really interesting, and that's what intrigued me.
Yeah, no,
I love how on your computer you have the tape down on the thing so no one can see you. So, like, look in front of you.
All right.
And
yes.
see how you tape down the webcam part?
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. I was like looking behind because I got screens behind me too. So
That's funny.
which one you were talking about? Yeah, no, I know. I always do that because I get, you know what, you hear all these things about people hacking into your computer and getting on your, and like I said, they'd probably be bored to death if they ever did that. but
I see that and I go, I should probably do that.
Yeah, just an extra safety precaution. Not that, I mean, it's probably, who the hell would want to hack my computer anyway? But you never know. You hear all these creepy stories, and like I said, I don't want to have somebody like watching me. Just anyway, it freaks me out. So
it's freaking me out now.
Well, you never know. I mean, somebody could be watching this whole thing, but
well, hopefully someone is, right?
Yeah. But we're on Skype, so that's all right. Okay. But it's like I said, I love that documentary. I actually first saw it on a plane. I was on a plane, and you know how you're on I was on a United flight. I forget where the hell I was going, probably to some shark trip somewhere that I do. And I was on, and I'm like, what the, and everything they had on there was like, oh, I don't really want to watch that. I don't really watch that. And I was like, oh, this is something I haven't seen. This is pretty cool. And I love Bill Murray. So I said, let me watch this. And I just love the whole concept. There was one particular part where he like walks into this college party with the band.
Yeah,
pretty insane. Which was pretty cool. And like I said, I just love that whole thing. And Bill Murray and the legends around him, because you hear about him showing up at weddings, you hear about him doing all these things where, he's just he just pops up, and and he has that whole thing where he tells people, no one's going to believe this and whatnot. Now in the days of cameras though and cell phones, it's a little harder for him to do, I think, without getting caught.
Yeah, I mean, with that particular party, that South by Southwest house party in Austin, like they had like a camera with a mini DV tape, and they would tape the bands that were performing. That's the only reason the camera was really around. No one really walked around with a camera back then, unless it was like American Beauty,
Yeah.
But like it's so it was really awesome that they had it. And those clips, like if you go online, you could search the band playing there, and Bill Murray being in the crowd. But they had never put those clips of like him eating lasagna or him just kind of like hang out, bringing the stuff in. They never released any of that sort of stuff. So the people in the party were really, really awesome in letting us kind of have that video and have that story.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. It was fun to watch. Like I said, I enjoyed it. And
what's cool about the airplane thing is like, you have these milestones in your head of like what I want my movie to play in a theater, or I want my movie to be at like Best Buy, and the airplane thing is something that I never really thought of, but it was super, I fly all the time. So I'm always watching movies on the plane. So I was like, oh, that'd be fun. And so many people watch that movie on the plane. Yeah. I think it's, it starts with a B, so it gets your attention easier. Our new movie, Waldo and Weed, it's like, well, no one's ever going to see because they're going to make a decision before they get the W,
Yeah, they're going to figure something out. Yeah.
But like, it's so crazy how many people I would get pictures of them watching on the airplane, and as soon as it went on there, all my planes stopped having televisions on there. I was like, I've never got to actually see my own movie on the airplane, so I was super bummed.
No, it was definitely like I said, I was happy I watched it, and it was just a great film, great documentary. Did you ever actually, because I don't know, I'm trying to remember, and I meant to watch it again before this interview. I remember the whole time you were calling an 800 number for Bill Murray and left a few messages. Did he ever get in touch with you?
Oh, come on, man. It's a big ending. No,
sorry, I don't want to blow the end, but yeah,
he never called me back. But the calls I was making, it was never to interview him for any of that sort of stuff. Yeah. It was just kind of like to find an interesting way to include him in the movie. Like we would love to have had him like walk by a shot, and when we're doing stuff, and like you wouldn't even know, or like this very Bill Murray like way to include himself in the movie, and then ultimately that's what kind of happens in the end. Yeah. But he was interviewed on the morning Today show, one of those shows. It was an NBC show, and like, Bill, you do all these crazy things. There's even a documentary about you and all these things. What do you think about it? And he was like, yeah, they reached out to me about being in the movie, but a movie about myself, that's something I'll do when I pass away. Yeah. and even like a couple friends of mine who are friends with Bill or have ran into Bill, yeah, they bring up the movie, and he goes, yeah, I've heard it's good, but I'm not going to watch it. And they're like, and these people are friends with me. He's like, you should really check it out. I think you'll like it. And Bill has always been like, if I ever get the flu, I'll check it out. So there's very, very Bill Murray like answers. But Joel, his brother, is in the movie, and he really, really liked it. And so it's really all I need. Like it's all good.
Yeah, no, it was great, and like I said, it was definitely a fantastic documentary, fantastic film, and I think he would like it if he saw it, but who knows if he'll ever actually watch it. He's kind of one of those guys that you never know what he's going to be up to.
And if he has, or if he does, or if he ever will, like, I'll never know, and I'm fine with that. Like I used to joke around when we do the Q&As at the end of the festival run that the Hollywood way the story ends is we're doing a Q&A, people like the movie. In the crowd, people might be like applauding or whatever, and he's there. He gives the thumbs up and then just disappears. I mean, that's the Hollywood made-up version,
Yeah. No, and like I said, I really enjoyed it, and then it kind of got me interested in some other stuff. And then, you had asked, I think, you had mentioned Waldo on weed, which is another, I think it's an important story. That's another important. I mean, that's more of a serious kind of tone to it than the Bill Murray documentary. And I mean, can you explain a little bit about what brought you into that one and what made you interested? Because I'm trying to kind of get. If you notice, there's a little theme here. I'm trying to get, because I love documentaries. I love when I mean, my wife is like, she goes crazy. I mean, she likes other stuff, but she hates when I sit there and watch documentaries. So
right.
But I'm a big fan of those, and I'm curious as to what makes people get interested in certain topics, like that one. Which is
I mean, we were kind of filming Waldo during the tail end of Bill Murray, so we were like kind of like doubling some of our shoots. But like I don't smoke pot. I never have. I don't have any interest in it really. But I knew Brian, the father of Waldo. The story of Waldo and weed is Waldo, as he's at 6 months old, has eye cancer, and his father and mother, more so his father, goes to California. They're living in Pennsylvania at the time, and smuggles cannabis oil to help with the chemotherapy that their son's about to have. Mm-hmm. And I had known Brian. I lived in New Jersey, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. I worked in Philadelphia.
That's where I'm now, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in Somerset, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's what central, north?
As central as you can get, man. It's dead center of New Jersey. I mean, it's literally right in the middle.
Do you go to Red Bank at all?
It's right there. It's about 35, 40 minutes from me. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love going to the Kevin Smith's comic book shop.
Yeah.
The Secret Stash and the quick stop and all that stuff.
Yep. Now there's. Go ahead.
No. What were you saying about Kevin Smith?
No. I was gonna say I knew him and Jay came from here. I never actually met them.
Okay.
But I knew they were from Jersey.
Yeah.
In that area. Yeah.
Yeah, like Leonardo and all that area. So anyway, so I know Brian from the area. He was this guy who owned this pizza shop. He has this really high orange hair. He's a tall man. He's a character, So I originally reached out to him to hey, you have this pizza shop. He's got the largest collection of pizza memorabilia, So it's like, let's do something on pizza, And he had let me know about Waldo and kind of what was going on with him. Mm-hmm. And one thing led to another, and time had passed, and we kind of came together to put all this footage that he had. Like, he had been filming himself through his flip cam during the process, never intending it to be a movie, but kind of just getting himself through his own therapy of it. I have children, I automatically connected to what would a father do to save his son. Cannabis just happened to be the way they did that. So it was no way was I making like a propaganda film or a pro cannabis film, but it was like, this is a family story on hope, And
that's what I liked about it. I'm going to tell you, I liked the fact that it wasn't like, because people right away, it's like, marijuana, and they're pushing an agenda on that. And I don't think you were pushing an agenda at all. I think
I don't have an agenda.
you were making people aware of something. And this was like kind of like before CBD became widely accepted as now everybody's, you can find it everywhere now. I mean, it's all over the place, but
but it's kind of dangerous though. If you don't some places, you're I would never buy like a CBD at a bodega or something like that. Or it's at the Wawa or 7-Elevens. It's like, maybe you should think where that came from, Yeah,
because it's not very regulated, and that's
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other.
But that's why Brian went out, sought out a farmer, a grower that knew how to do it organically and clean. So when he went to California, he met up with Dr. Dina, who had a store that sold Matt Rise's stuff, and it was all these sort of, there was a lot of people think of it, they go, oh, I'll just buy it like I would Tylenol, but it's just not the same currently,
Yep.
So even with the story itself, I didn't really my producers knew a lot more about the politics or the science behind it. I would know some of it so I could speak to the doctors. I spoke to a doctor at Harvard. I felt like a real documentarian at that point, I'm speaking to doctors and politicians.
Gave you some legitimacy there.
Yeah. But me, I focus on the human element, and all our sort of stories are about, our human interactions, with the Santa Claus movie, with Bill Murray and Waldo. It's it's the human element that I think makes ours stand out. And there's tons of Santa Claus documentaries. There's another Bill Murray documentary. There's tons of weed documentaries. So it's I think those human elements are usually what find people connecting with the stuff that we do,
Yeah, no, it's definitely, like I said, it's one of those definite human interest stories that seem to really have a good kind of a good tone to it, where and the thing is, I think people need to understand too, CBD is a component of basically when you look at marijuana or what people consider pot. This is the CBD is the other piece of it, not the THC. It's not psychoactive. It's not the other.
The stuff that Waldo was taking was a 20-to-1. So you're having that very high CBD to very, very low THC. So there is some THC in there. And some of the scientists talk about the entourage effect, where they need that little bit of THC to kind of boost some of that CBD, get the CBD to really do what it's doing.
To release,
Yeah, but what's interesting is it's it's just talking to some of these doctors and politicians, it's really they're seeing that there's this stuff happening, and I think 5-10 years, you're going to see some of the results of all the stuff that's happening now, and it's what's been happening,
Yep. Yeah. No, and that's true. I think you're going to start seeing more accepted. And I think it's getting more accepted as time goes on. And like I said, I don't smoke pot. I'm actually somebody, I've been in recovery for many years from drug addiction, and I don't particularly partake in any of that stuff. And people ask me all the time, what do you think? Should pot be legal? Should it not? I said, I really don't have any opinion on it whatsoever. What I do know, a friend of mine used to tell me one thing. He used to say, you know, people who get drunk go out and start a fight. People who smoke pot go out and start a band. So that was his philosophy. But
yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, it's like, I mean, this, you said addiction stuff, but it's like, you know, whether they made it legal or not legal, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to take advantage of it, you know, I mean, but that's with anything. That doesn't even need to be drugs. It's like, for like the internet, there's always going to be someone to take advantage. Like, there's always going to be someone to do it poorly. You know, I mean, I have really bad issues with cookies, you know, like I overdo
the cookies, man.
Well, I mean, like like Thin Mints with the Girl Scouts. It's like they're like these pushers, you know. And it's like I go out of my way to like use the other door so I don't have to like see them. It's like they're preying on this addiction that I have with Thin Mint cookies.
Sounds like another documentary, man.
It's something.
Being chased around by the Girl Scouts with the Thin Mint cookies, man.
It's but you think of it, like, there are people who really do have those issues, and I joke, but like I dip my toe in some of that stuff, you know. Yeah. And it's like, and they're right out there in the open. Like, if that was any other drug or stimulant, it's like they would be like knocked off the block, you know, like. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, you know, the thing is, what we do know is prohibitive measures rarely work. What they generally do is push things into the back alleys.
Yeah.
And they start organized crime. I mean, if you look back when alcohol was during Prohibition, it built the mafia. Yeah. It built organized crime pretty much just because it was illegal and they figured out ways to get it in. Same thing happens with, you know, you want to, and I'm not saying everything should be legal. I don't think that at all. I think honestly, for marijuana to be a Schedule I drug is kind of ridiculous. It's on the same level as heroin, which definitely should be illegal. But, you know, it's just kind of like one of these misconceptions. I mean, we're still acting like we did in the 60s and the 50s when when Reefer Madness came out.
that was like to push the agenda of it being scary, you know? I mean, look, and like, I grew up watching Cheech and Chong movies and Half Baked and being a fan of those, but that's, to me, is what, a cannabis smoker is, you know? But then been speaking to these doctors that are like at Harvard, who have put all this time into this thing. It's like, it's actually a little bit more than that, you know? And it's always what, is ingrained in us, you know, like it's different cultural or different just things that like, I heard this and there's not much education on it. Like, well, why would I ever educate cannabis? Because I never really cared to want it. So like, but when I'm drinking, it's like, do I want this? It's like, well, it's like, I was getting a little puffy drinking like ciders too much, so I Googled and educated myself on alcohols that were like less than calories, So I don't know.
You went with the light stuff, but
I kind of went on a tangent that didn't really answer any of those sort of things, and making light of like more serious things. But it's like it's I don't know.
Hey, in these times, man, we got to make light of things because things are pretty serious right now. Yeah. And I don't know how you guys are doing out there in California, but we're like New Jersey, New York, like kind of like the epicenter of the chaos here as to what's going on.
I mean, my buddy was telling me that you can't even get into a Wawa with a mask. You have to have a mask on to get in the Wawa. And I was like, that's good for them, I mean, I'm bummed that Disney's closed,
Yeah, you can't go to any store. I was at Walmart this morning. God help me. I was at Walmart. There's a line to get in because they're only letting about 50 people in at a time, and you have to have a mask on or they won't let you in. So, which is good. I mean, I think we need to do that right now. We need to get this thing out of here so we can go back to business as usual because I'm I work in healthcare every day. I mean, that's what I do. So I'm out and working. But, there's a lot of people I'm sure are going stir crazy that are stuck in their houses with nothing to do. We got 15 or 17 million. I'm not even sure people out of work right now nationwide, which is crazy. One of the things I wanted to say is I got a lot of people asking me also is like, well, they closed down all non-essential businesses, but liquor stores are still open.
Because I heard Philadelphia, they closed.
I don't know that. I didn't hear that. I know in New Jersey they kept the liquor stores open. I think in New York they kept the liquor stores open. And I don't think I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, I think number one, they were probably worried about the prohibition kind of stuff happening again, where people started, kind of moving it out the back door and charging extra money or whatever for it, and other things happening. But the other piece of that, and being an addiction specialist, because that's what I do in my life for real.
Oh, cool.
Being a specialist in that, the other piece of that is alcohol is one of those drugs that you can die from and withdraw. So if you have people that are out there that are alcoholics and you take away their ability before they can get the treatment to access that drug, which is alcohol, they could potentially die. So that might be another reason. I don't know what their reasoning was, but that could play into it. Maybe they're worried about that. Maybe they want to keep people drunk and happy so they stay home. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the great thing about here is like they're in the grocery stores, so it's going to be open regardless. No
matter what you're going to have. Yeah, it's going to be there. So there's a couple, and I know I want to get into some, because you got some new projects happening. This is Guar.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that one? Because I'm a big rock and metal fan, and I would love to hear anything you could tell me on that one.
Yeah, so I'm a producer on that movie, and as you can see on the IMDb, we've interviewed a lot of cool people. We actually just put that on IMDb. Like the project's not really all the way announced yet. We're leaving it up to the band to kind of do that stuff. But that's going to be a fun one. That's all I can say. It's going to be fun. I mean, the band's awesome.
It's on IMDb, so I'm not breaking any kind of.
No, I understand. But it's so funny because we're like, oh well, we'll let the band announce it, but put it on IMDb. No one's checking that. But yeah,
and then Steve comes into the picture and finds.
Yeah. So and it's just we're just kind of like, trying to figure out ways to play inside the system. Like Santa, Bill Murray, Waldo were all like independently financed and then sold outright. Santa Claus did this very small theatrical run, was on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime. Mick Foley is in that.
I was going to ask you about that because I wanted to talk about the Santa Claus project too, because
sure.
Mick is I've interviewed Mick as well. Yeah, Mick's a great guy. I love that guy.
Oh,
he's
fantastic.
Such a wonderful human.
Yeah.
But
Mick, he at the time, like every movie we did, we tried to put a professional wrestler in there because he's just a huge wrestling fan, and it was organic in that Mick was once we started making documentaries, it was like, well, how do we get these wrestlers in there organically? And I was like, well, Mick's actually like a big Santa fanatic. We should see if he'd want to be Santa,
Yeah.
And it just worked out. And like through doing that doc, like we interviewed Jerry Lawler, we met Roddy Piper. Piper's in it. I mean, and during the credits, you see Diamond Dallas Page walk in the background. We interviewed Tommy Dreamer, Blue Meanie. So it was like this movie about Santa Claus, and there's so many wrestlers in it,
Yeah, no, it was great. It was like I said, Mick is just like I said, one of those guys where I'm sure he was like, sure, I'll do it, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting part of his life because he had just started doing those like sort of the stand-up spoken words thing, So he was like really putting his attention in that, and this was just a thing he was like, oh, it was just kind of doing. But then once he bleached his beard and became Santa in the movie, our relationship kind of just changed. Like he was just like, this is very important to me. He kind of came on as a producer. He'd come over to my house and help edit. He helped promote the movie. Like he really kind of like shifted once he felt, movie's 5 years old now and he's been Santa every year since, and it's because of the movie, it was just, and he was the first Santa to my son, so he's a very important part of my life, but he became a bigger part of the movie after he did the Santa, being Santa.
Yeah, no, he's really good like that. And like I said, when I asked him to do an interview, I had met him at Professional Fighters League World Championships. and this was Madison Square Garden. So, Mick was there helping promote and doing, he was just doing his thing. I don't think he was really doing much but hanging out. He was there. And I had asked him for the interview, and he was like, "Sure, I'll interview with you." I'm like, I'm some nobody, just somebody walking around with a camera and a microphone. And he was willing to sit down with me. So ever since then, I was like, I'm a big fan of I was always a fan of Mick Foley, but I became of the wrestler. But in that moment, I became a fan of Mick Foley, the human.
I mean, he's an amazing human. I mean, like even the other movies that we've done with the doc space, we've always tried to put a wrestler in it. I produced this movie called Ghost Heads, and Zack Ryder's in there. We did interview Georgie Animal Steel for Bill Murray. Unfortunately,
interesting.
Yeah, because he was in Ed Wood with him, but that's in the DVD cutscenes. And then it was Waldo. Dr. Dina does mention Snoop Dogg. We have a picture of Snoop Dogg, and he is technically in the WWE Hall of Fame. So, so who knows?
Cool. So what's next, man? What's I mean, you got all this stuff going on. I know you got some things in production, some things we weren't supposed to talk about, but we did. Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, we've been working on trying to elevate our game in that, opposed to making these smaller movies that sell and do like good with festival runs or on Netflix or iTunes or whatever, is trying to figure out a way to work with the networks and all that stuff in the beginning stages to try to tell bigger stories and, just bigger movies, Yeah. So there's these like lists of like stories or characters or things that I want to tell and people I want to work with. And I, some of them you think are going to happen and then they don't, or they're getting paused. So it's just a weird spot, especially right now too. Everyone now is looking like, well, what's our quarantine material? Like what could be worked on during the quarantine?
Where's the B-roll at?
Right. I mean, you're going to see a lot of sort of like archival footage movies. So it's like, cause it's just an editor then, it's the editor's game,
Yeah. Is there a particular person you really like, a dream person you really want to work with? Yeah. Or have as a subject or, whatever. I mean, it's an interesting, you had said there's people you'd like to work with. So it's an interesting question kind of popped into my head.
Yeah. I mean, like I really would love to do something about Andy Kaufman at one point in my life, Andy Kaufman,
definitely an interesting character.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of got me. He's just like one of those guys that like I watched like one of their specials on Comedy Central when I was in like the 9th or 10th grade, and I connected with in a lot of ways. I was in a comedy rap group when I was in my like early 20s and did a lot of Andy Kaufman like things. I've always loved bad guy wrestlers, and he was the example of what a bad guy wrestler could be, So there's a lot of that sort of stuff, and so I've been trying to develop sort of projects like that, or getting back into scripted things. Like, when I first started making movies, I wanted to be like Kevin Smith, and I just kind of shifted into documentaries. But I feel like it's trying to figure out like how I could keep doing things, but in bigger, more different ways,
Yeah, you got to keep it interesting, right? Keep doing
it. If we could all be like Chris Jericho, it's like Chris Jericho is one of those guys that just reinvents himself every couple of years and stays relevant, stays at the top of his game. He's almost 50 years old. It's like if we could just all be Chris Jericho, then that would be fantastic.
Well, I have an Italian friend of mine who says you can't eat the same spaghetti your entire life, so you got to mix things up every once in a while. I
feel like I could.
But, you have to, I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I think reinventing yourself every once in a while, figuring out new things. I mean, that's one of the things where, for me, I started doing this podcast in June, almost a year now.
Okay.
Started doing this one, and it was because I was kind of tossing it around in my head for a while, and I said, you know what, let me just pull the trigger, because I spent so much time trying to figure out what I wanted it to be that I wasted a lot of time figuring that out instead of just pulling the trigger and putting out content, right? So let me just get out there and do it. And
I always wanted to start a podcast, and I recorded a pilot and all that sort of stuff, but it's like, it's kind of like, I don't want to say the word scary, but it's intimidating because it's like there's so many people making podcasts.
Oh yeah.
And the podcasts that I would want to do are not anything different than anything that's out there. It's just I just want to talk to these people, you know. You know.
What? That's part of it, though. I mean,
right.
I tell people, you know, and I just actually, I don't know if you know who TJ DeSantis is, but he's a big podcaster. He's been around for podcasting. He's a radio personality. He's been around.
I only listen to Mark Maron, Pete Holmes, and Chris Hardwick.
Okay.
but I started listening to the Office Ladies. What's up?
No Joe Rogan for you?
Nah.
Okay. Yeah, there's you know, he basically, you know, him and I were talking, and he's like, yeah, you know, he's like, a lot of people talk to me about podcasts, and he said, one thing I'll tell you, figure out what you want to do is what your goal is. If your goal is to make money, don't start a podcast, because that's not where it's at. You know, if it's to drive something else, or if it's just a labor of love and it's something you want to do, you know, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just kind of putting content out. Whatever happens, happens. It's a lot of fun. I get to talk to very interesting people like yourself. I talk to a ton of people, and I get to have fun doing it. You know, and it's like I said, I owned a recording studio for years prior to all this, and kind of still had a lot of equipment. So I was like, all right, well, let me put it to some use, right? So that's kind of where all this kind of came from. But, you know, you can't come in this for money. You know, there are 800,000 podcasts right now, active podcasts, which is insane. The good thing about podcasting is it is what you make it, right? You put out there are no real rules. You can do whatever the hell you want. Nobody's telling you what you can do or what you can't do. So, you know, it's kind of like the Wild West right now, and hopefully it kind of stays that way for a while. And eventually, you know, like I said, there's going to be a bunch of breakout people that are going to do really well. I mean, you still got, you know, Joe Rogan still got the top podcast out there, which he seems to break every single rule and still stay at the top. I mean, one of the rules are don't do anything more than a 30 to 40 minute podcast. Whereas
he's like 3 hours, right?
He does a 3-hour podcast, right?
Is it every day, or is it once a week?
He does it like twice a week now, I think.
Okay.
You know, and you know, but everybody's doing one now, which is, you know, like I said, it is intimidating because what are you going to do that's different? And I don't know if I'm doing anything different or not, but I'm having fun doing it, and I'll keep inventing it, and I'll reinvent it as many times as I need to, right? So
to talk, you know, kind of like with that sort of train of thought, where it's like, you know, with the I Am Santa Claus movie, it was like these, you know, it's a follow doc and characters and all that sort of stuff, and like it very much is like anyone who had seen some of my prior stuff, or I hate to say anyone who knew me, but like you could tell that I made that movie, you know.
Yeah.
And Bill Murray's stories, I feel like it's very much in the same vein. You know, it's not a follow doc, but it's a director put himself in sort of investigating a story sort of movie. But you put those two movies together, and I feel like, you know, it's like I saw this movie once called a Gentleman's Bronco, right? Mm-hmm. And I was watching the movie, and I go, this looks like, it feels like Napoleon Dynamite, you know? And then I reached out, I looked up the director, and it was the same guy. And I love that. I was like, oh, well, you're seeing, like, it's like a Tarantino movie. You know, a Tarantino movie. You know, a Kevin Smith movie. You know, all these sort of movies, you know, Linklater and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, well, if you saw Bill Murray stories and Santa, I feel like you kind of tell it's by the same person, you know?
Definitely have a style. You definitely have a style. It's kind of like a combination of investigative journalism and a documentary. It's really kind of you know, very interesting, and you insert yourself in the story too. So it's
just Bill Murray though, you know, like that's the only one, you know. But then you see Waldo, and it's like, can you tell that it's in the same sort of, you know, work as Santa and Bill Murray? And I don't think you can. And there's only like one shot or two shots in the movie where I'm like, oh, you can kind of see some of my humor in there. It's like when we're talking about how CBD is everywhere, and there's a shot that says CBD pizza. but that's the thing. It's like, I really, really enjoyed telling this like honest, raw, serious story, which is unlike some of the stuff I've done before. Even though Santa and Bill Murray are comedic, they have very like real messages and really real moments. It's very these like Trojan horse sort of movies where you walk in going, hey, look, Santa, hey, look, Bill Murray, but then there's this message underneath. Yeah. Whereas Waldo was a little bit more serious, and I love doing those stories. So it's like, I feel like there's like one of those things, like when you're talking about like reinventing or whatever, it's like, I like that I could do a Waldo movie, and then I like how I can do a Santa or Bill Murray type movie too. Like they're like, they're just all stories I like to tell, and I find it. There's always a way that I find something interesting about it, but I don't think you could watch Waldo and watch Santa and go, that's the same guy.
Yeah, it's good to have the contrast, though. I mean, that's, you know, reinvent how you do things, reinvent what you're interested in. It keeps it exciting, keeps it not, you know, because the last thing you want to do is get stale and boring. You know, that's the last thing you want to do, I think, in creativity is get to that point where you have a formula.
Right.
And this is the formula I'm going to use every single time I shoot.
You see that like a lot with musicians, where it's like, you know, once they become rich and like kind of like a thing, like a brand or whatever, they're like, well, what would I do opposed to this is what I would do, you know? And like they try to like, because once you kind of lose touch of all that sort of stuff, you know, I mean, that's why so many people's best albums is when they're broken poor.
Oh yeah, because they're hungry. And
Yeah.
they don't quite know how they're doing it yet. They don't know what works yet, right? Because once people figure out, okay, this worked and it was a big hit. Now let's release this same song in 15 different ways.
Yeah.
From now on. And that's what happens, unfortunately. You know, and you know, people tend to find out at some point that's, you know, people start to lose interest. It becomes stale. It gets boring, you know. So it's good to keep it exciting, keep yourself exciting. And, you know, I appreciate you taking the time today to talk with me. And, you know, it's definitely a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything else that you feel we didn't cover or anything you want to throw out there?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
I want that Bill Murray head in the back there, man. I want
So the Bill Murray. So if you watch the Santa Claus movie, and you said you're using the video, but like, so Dave Deneen, like this is the claymation video of the Santa Claus.
Yeah.
You know, Dave Deneen did Buddy Christ and Dogma, and he did our Santa Russell claymation, and then he also did the Bill Murray mask, which is funny because with that Bill Murray mask, like there's no eye holes in it, so like the actor who used like the first 3 minutes of the movie can't see. You know, so it's funny. Like I was going to use this to go to the store, but I couldn't go. I can't see out of it. Yeah.
So you gotta poke some little holes in it or something. I don't know if that would be sacrilege. I think
There's 3 masks made for the movie, right? I have one. Producer Max has another, and then Derek, who's the producer camera guy, has the other one. He's the only one that has eye holes because he would wear them at like the comic conventions, and he would just walk around with them. So I was telling him he should go to the Wawa or the stores with that, you know?
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, man, for coming on. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
Busy guy. I don't know. You know, I know you guys are all isolated out there too, so teamed up and you know. But stay safe. You know, congratulations on the newborn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 weeks old now.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. And you and your family stay safe and stay well. And thank you for coming on Xtreme Lyfe, man. I appreciate it.
You too, man. And thanks for your interest. And thanks for reaching out.
No worries, man. Anytime.
And thank you for watching Waldo, too.